Hello, everyone. I hope I am audible. This is, I think, the 13th live stream I'm doing. And in this one, I'm just going to be talking a bit about chamomile, which is a plant I find incredibly useful. And I think sometimes it's sort of stereotyped as something that is, oh, sorry about the lighting, something that is not that useful or that is maybe just makes a really basic herbal tea when actually it's an incredibly useful medicine. So the usual disclaimer before I get into the herbalness of it all, this is the internet. So I am a medical herbalist. I will be talking about chamomile from a professional standpoint as a herbalist, but please do check out anything that I say. Don't take anything I'm saying as a medical recommendation. If you have any medical issues, please do go and see your qualified medical herbalist or your physician. But I will be putting, as usual, a link below this video on YouTube and below the podcast on Spotify or whatever, or a paper about chamomile, so you can check it all out. Right, okay, I'm going to start by doing a little bit of a reading from my very battered old copy of Culpepper's Herbal to give you the 17th century view on chamomile. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the medicinal use I've got out of chamomile in the past. Before I do that, just one word of clarification. I am talking about what's sometimes known as German chamomile or Chamomilla recutita. Its alternate botanical name, because botanists do like to play with names a lot, I think. Its alternate name is, I think, Matricaria recutita. So both of those names are used. I've got a bag of dried chamomile here. So sorry for anyone on the audio only, they won't see this, but these are some sort of dried chamomile flowers, which will probably not show up very clearly on the camera, or maybe they will. I can. So they're just like little yellow round flower heads with white petals. And anyone who, I suspect most people will be familiar with chamomile, but it's a very distinctive sort of pleasant, slightly apple-like floral smell. It's not really like apples, but a little bit. In the Spanish name for it is manzanilla, which means little apple. So it's that chamomile that I'm going to be talking about. The other chamomile, the so-called Roman chamomile, Anthemis nobilis, is quite similar, but it's a bit less potent, I would say, than the German chamomile. And if that sounds funny, talking about chamomile as being potent, wait till we talk about its medicinal uses. It has a lot. So this is what Culpeper says about it from 17th century. A decoction made of chamomile and drank takes away all pains and stitches in the side. The flowers of chamomile beaten and made up into balls with gill. I think that's a type of ale. Drive away all sorts of agues. If the part grieved, be anointed with that oil taken from the flowers, from the crown of the head to the sole of the foot, and afterwards laid to sweat in his bed. It's profitable for all sorts of agues. Those are joint pains with fever that come from phlegm or melancholy, or from an inflammation of the bowels, being applied when the humours causing them shall be concocted. What he means there is, this is old medicine. The humours causing them shall be concocted means that when the person is, they first do some other treatment to kind of reduce the symptoms a bit, and then they'll apply the chamomile at the end. And there is nothing more profitable to the sides and region of the liver and spleen than it. A bathing with decoction of chamomile takes away weariness, eases pains to what part of the body soever they be applied. It comforts the sinews that are overstrained, mollifies all swellings. It moderately comforts all parts that have need of warmth, digests and dissolves whatsoever has need thereof by a wonderful speedy property. It eases all pains of the colic and stone. He's talking about gallstones there, and all pains and torments of the belly, and gently provokes urine. So far we've got it's analgesic, reduces pain. It's diuretic, which is the increasing urine. It's a bit anti-inflammatory, possibly. I'll carry on. The flowers boiled in posset drink, that means just boiled in a drink with other herbs, provokes sweat and helps to expel all colds, aches, and pains whatsoever, and is an excellent help to bring down women's courses. Syrup made of the juice of chamomile with the flowers in white wine is a remedy against the jaundice and dropsy. The flowers boiled in lye are good to wash the head and comfort both it and the brain. The oil made of the flowers of chamomile is much used against all hard swellings, pains or aches, shrinking of the sinews or cramps or pains in the joints or any other part of the body. Being used in clisters, it helps to dissolve the wind and pains of the belly. He's talking about enemas there. Anointed also, it helps stitches and pains in the side. The Egyptians dedicated it to the sun because it cured agues. Again, agues are joint pains with fever, and they were like enough to do it, for they were the arrantist apes in their religion. Okay, this is Culpeper just being 17th century bigoted against foreigners. Buccinus, Berra, and Lobel commend the syrup made of the juice of it and sugar taken inwardly to be excellent for the spleen. Also, this is certain that it wonderfully breaks the stone. I think he's talking about kidney stones there, not gallstones, but it could be either. Some take it in syrup or decoction, blah, blah, blah. So Culpeper talks about several uses there. And what's interesting is that many of those uses have been confirmed by research now. So in the paper I've put down below, you can see that there are, I'm just going to access it because there's a great little diagram where it has a picture of the cauliflower, and then it has all these arrows going off, and it says antioxidant activity, antimicrobial, antiparasitic, insecticidal, anti-diabetic, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, analgesic, antipyretic, anti-anxiety, antidepressant, anti-hypertensive, anti-allergic, and gastroprotective. So that's a whole lot of fancy words. But basically, chamomile is a very useful multi-activity plant, and I really like it as a sort of an avatar of herbal medicine, because like most medicinal plants, its action isn't down to one constituent. It has a whole bundle of different active pharmacological constituents. So it's got the essential oil, which has loads of different compounds in it, like chamazulene and bisabolol. It's got loads of flavonols. It's got some polysaccharides, I think, has a bunch of different constituents. And what they found is when they took out some of the most anti-inflammatory constituents, for example, like chamazulene out of the essential oil or bisabolol, none of them work independently as well as they do when they're all taken together. So it's a classic medicinal plant in that it's the whole plant that is the medicine, not any of its parts. So I'm going to tell you about some of the times I've used chamomile personally. And it is a plant I think I probably prescribe. It's used in about 50% of my prescriptions as a herbalist, probably. And one of my teachers, when I was studying, Richard Adams, it used to be one of his favorite herbs. And he used to say, if all herbs were banned except you're allowed to keep only one, that would be the one he would keep. So, all right. So some of the uses that I've made of it. So the first incident was, I think, when I was maybe 19, 20, and I've been doing some gardening, and I'd been throwing some rocks about. I think I've been throwing them a bunch of heavy rocks into a wheelbarrow, and I hadn't been doing it very mindfully. And then 2 days later, about 48 hours later, I woke up at about 4 a.m. in absolute agony, in intense back pain. And I needed to go to the hospital because the back pain was really bad. And they basically they x-rayed it, checked it out, said, look, it's nothing. This is just a severe muscle sprain. You just need to take painkillers, go home and rest. So when I got home, obviously I was put on painkillers. It's paracetamol. I think it's called Tylenol in the USA. But I was still in pain. So I made a very strong cup of chamomile tea and used about 2 tablespoons of the flowers to make 1 cup of chamomile tea. Really, really strong, very bitter. And that significantly reduced the pain. So one of chamomile's properties is that it's anodyne. Some say analgesic. The two are approximately synonyms. They both mean pain relieving, But in my mind, at least, anodyne is slightly less potent than analgesic. So you might say something like morphine is analgesic or codeine is analgesic. I would describe chamomile as anodyne. It relieves or reduces the pain, but it doesn't completely block it. Um, but it certainly was it's quite notable. Its effect is quite notable. And I remember having that argument a few years later by one of my herbal tutors, Colin Nichols, who's a fantastic herbalist. But he was adamant that chamomile was just used for digestive problems. And I was like, no, it's great for pain. I'd include it in prescriptions for people who are living with chronic pain because it's great. And the research, I think, has at this point backed me up on that, which I'm happy about because it is referred to in the old herbals, as you just heard, for pain as well. But it certainly helped me with the back pain. I remember drinking the chamomile tea. And so if I'd taken some paracetamol, that might have taken the pain down from a sort of 9 out of 10 to a 5. And just taking the chamomile tea might have taken it down from 5 to 2 or 1. It really knocked it down more. So that was one instant. I found it was a quite useful anodyne. And in the tradition, as you've heard from Culpeper, it was regarded as slightly warming. So it's good for relaxing pain where there's tension. And I think that's why it's very useful for something like in that situation with back pain. Because what often happens when people are experiencing pain is they tense up around the pain. Muscles tense up to sort of guard them from more pain, and that can actually make the pain worse. So something like chamomile, which is a very gentle relaxant and pain reliever, will help a bit because it'll actually help relax some of that physical tension. Second thing I used it for is digestive problems. And I remember this was a couple of years later, at a time when I was sort of in the throes of an eating disorder, and I was trying to do this crazy raw food stuff, and I was eating just I think I was at my grand's house and I'd got eaten some raw carrots and a load of Brazil nuts for breakfast, like a bag of Brazil nuts, and it wasn't great. And I'd eaten Brazil nuts are about 50% fat, so that's quite a lot of fat and raw food in one go. And anyway, it didn't agree with me, and I ended up with incredible stomach pain and really, really, really bad colic, which is just abdominal pain. And I think my mum was there and she said, why don't you just drink some chamomile? So make some chamomile and drink that. So I did. And within about 20 minutes, it started reducing the pain. And it took a few hours, but and I just kept steadily drinking the tea, and it gradually, 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 gradually took the pain down. So it's great for spasms or cramps in the stomach. I think it's one of the key herbs for IBS, for irritable bowel syndrome, for that reason, because it's relaxing and anti anxiety, but also reduces digestive spasm and it reduces inflammation in the digestive tract. Um, the third use, I think, was when I was on holiday, but I think I was in the UK and we'd been for a walk on the beach or something and got back in the evening. And when you've got sunburn and you're fine during the day, but then when the sun goes down, it's like your skin's soaked up all that sunlight during the day and it starts to radiate it out at night. So I suddenly realized my arms and my legs were on fire. Not literally, they just felt a bit painful. So got sunburned, and I didn't have any of my usual over the counter remedy, which would be aloe vera gel. I'd usually get some aloe vera gel and whack a bit of lavender essential oil in it, and that works really well. But I didn't have that, but I did have some chamomile tea. So some tea, just tea bags, I think, just ordinary little tea bags from over the counter. So I soaked those and I was dabbing them on my skin, on the arms, and that reduced the pain by about 50%. It helped. Didn't sort it out completely, but it helped. So that sort of topical anti-inflammatory thing was very useful and sort of ironic considering that traditionally they called it a herb of the sun. That might have been described as a sympathetical cure by medieval and Renaissance physicians because you're using a herb of the sun to treat a sunburn. But anyway, um, the next example was in 2017, I came down with the flu. I didn't realize it was the flu at the time. This is why they sometimes call influenza the great pretender, because I was bedbound for about 4 weeks in total. Um, so it was pretty severe, and I just had joint pain, felt really ill. But after the first sort of few days, when I was like, what's going on? I realized it was probably something viral, but I didn't know what it was. Um, so I just made myself up a herbal tea with a bunch of different plants that were anti-inflammatory and relaxant and stimulate the immune system and all the rest of it. And one of the main ingredients of this tea was chamomile, because it has that. I was getting joint pain. I was I just felt depressed. I had joint pain. Um, and I chamomile, among its other uses, as well as helping to reduce anxiety and depression, and as well as helping to reduce pain, it's also what's known in herbal medicine as a diaphoretic. That is a plant that can bring on a sweat. What's interesting about it, in the tradition, it was described as hot and dry in the first degree, which means it's not. There were 4 degrees in the Galenic tradition, which is the Claudius Galen, the Roman physician who invented this classification system. And fourth degree would be like garlic or chilies or something really, really hot, where you chew a chili and you'll start to sweat immediately. The first degree was as hot as the human body. So if you are in good health, if you ate or drank a medicine that was hot in the first degree, it wouldn't seem to do very much. But if you were already a bit feverish, that medicine that was hot in the first degree would bring on a sweat, sort of thing. So chamomile was hot in the first degree. And we know from some of the pharmacological research in it that, as well as being anodyne, that means pain relieving, as well as being anti inflammatory, as well as being a bit antimicrobial, inhibits the growth of several different kinds of bacteria. It's also antipyretic. It can lower a fever, and it will do that by bringing on a sweat and helping the temperature go down. It also, I believe, is a bit of a generic immune stimulant. Now, it's not an immune stimulant like other medicinal plants like astragalus or echinacea or pau d'arco or even elderberry. It's not an immune stimulant like those. It's a more of a primary immune stimulant, meaning if you have a plant that helps to bring on a fever, it's going to just help the primary immune defenses. Because that's what fevers do. That the body heats up a bit, and that helps the body fight off the infection. So anyway, the long and the short of it was this tea, which featured a fair whack of chamomile. As soon as I had the first cup, about half an hour later, I distinctly remember this. I was sitting in bed feeling awful, and I just felt this wave of relief go over me. And it's like I felt my body sort of burst out into sweat, and I just felt relaxed. It was like, oh, this is so nice. And I made a pot of that tea every day for the next 4 weeks. And it just kept me, it made me feel better for sure. But that partly because of its relaxant effect. But I'm absolutely certain that it actually helped my recovery, because it certainly reduced my level of physical discomfort. And I think it probably helped the immune system. It's only after I recovered that I realized that I'd just been through a bout of flu, which might sound ridiculous, but I never in that time went to the doctor. I tend not to go to the doctor unless my head's literally hanging off, partly because it's very difficult to get an appointment, and partly because I've never found them. I've found them very helpful, hospitals, etc. When I've had operations in the past, but my local GP here, where I live in London, has never been particularly helpful. Very nice people, but they've never actually helped. So um, anyway, not to diss them, because they're all just doing their jobs and whatever. But so, all right. So, flu. The next one I've sort of mentioned a bit, and that is depression, or I should say, I'm not talking about clinical depression here. I'm talking about mild mood disorder, like just feeling a bit low. And chamomiles are very good for that. I had an ex who really liked chamomile tea for that reason, and they said that if they drank if they felt a bit depressed, they'd drink a cup with 1 bag of chamomile tea, because that would sort their mood out a bit. And if they wanted to go to sleep, they'd drink a bag with 2 cups of chamomile tea, because that would help them sleep. And that's broadly true. A smaller dose of chamomile, like 1 or 2 teaspoons of the loose leaf of the dried flowers in a cup of boiling water, steep for a few minutes, will make a pleasant tasting mild infusion that'll just help improve mood and may even therefore improve focus. Um, Certainly not all the constituents of chamomile are sedatives. Some are actually slightly stimulating. So a weaker dose will tend to improve mood and focus a little bit, but a stronger dose, and I make a tea with, if I've not got any other herbs with me, if I'm traveling, I'll often just take chamomile with me if I feel like I'll need a tea to help me sleep, and I'll do a couple of tablespoons, a couple of heaping tablespoons of chamomile to make one giant cup, a big latte-sized cup of really strong chamomile tea that's really bitter, and that does have a notable relaxant effect. So depression and sleep. And then finally, one of the other things I've used it for myself is allergy. And it does have this mild allergy reducing activity. It's not strong for that. I would always combine it with other plants, but it makes a great background treatment in allergies. And that does bring me on to I've used it in a tea, for example, for rhinitis, which is year-round allergy to dust that I used to get and don't get so much now, and also for hay fever. And I'll often combine it with other herbs like plantain, like mint, like elderflower, like nettle. Mix those together and make a brew which works more effectively than the one plant alone. But chamomile on its own will dial down allergies a bit. And that brings me on to the final point. The one major contraindication for chamomile, the one reason why you shouldn't use it, is if you are allergic to it. It does belong to the daisy family, the Asteraceae, and there are more people are allergic to plants in that family than to any other plant family. So it is a plant that is not to be taken if you are allergic to Asteraceae. So I think I'm going to leave it there. This has been not reasonable length. I think 25 minutes. This is going to be my last live stream of the year. I may do some more next year, but I think I'm going to give it a little rest for a while, and I might produce some more long form videos that take a bit longer to produce. But I have some other projects to be getting on with at the moment, so I'll be focusing on them. But I hope you found this video interesting. If you have, please like it, please share it, please subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I'll see you whenever I do another video. All right, bye.